Tonight's guest has a glorious voice that gave us the hit, Get Here. But her latest release shows us that Oleta Adams is moving on. Oleta, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me here.
So now you grew up in a small town in Washington State, right? Mm-hmm. Up in the mountains. What was that like?
I think the lovely thing was that your neighbors helped to raise a family. It wasn't just your parents who was raising you. If you got into trouble coming home from school, a neighbor would see you doing whatever you did, call you in the house, give you a little spanking or yelling at or whatever, and then send you on your way, call your mama, and when you got home, you got another spanking. It was that kind of thing, you know. People cared about people.
And they had the right to do that by your parents.
That's right. Nobody called anybody and sued, you know. Nothing like it is today.
That's the good old way.
But it was very warm. I was born in Seattle, which was much bigger than Yakima, Yakima, Washington, which is in central eastern Washington. It's desert. Yakima is desert. And since it's on the other side of the mountains, they grow hops, and I don't know what else they do there, not a whole lot. But it was still great growing up in a small place. Seattle was awfully big. And I remember when we moved to Yakima, because my dad was a minister, he had a church over there. We moved there, and I thought, oh, this is much better because I can walk to school. Right. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, of course. A lot of singers start in the church, but you were directing and accompanying a choir and bossing around, what, 4 people by the time you were 11?
4 choirs, yeah.
4 different choirs?
4 different choirs. That's not something that I would recommend for an 11-year-old today. It was a lot of responsibility, and sometimes directing church people can be more difficult than the secular world. But yeah.
Why?
Because I think so much is done in the name of religion and so forth, and you see an awful lot of hypocrisy, and feelings get very deeply hurt. They're still all the same feelings. There's a lot of jealousies there, and I guess it's very hard to take in, especially when you're that age, 11 years old.
You see it so clearly.
You see it very, very clearly, and it messes you up later on when you get a greater understanding of what Christianity is supposed to be all about. But I learned a lot. I learned about being able to handle groups of people, how to handle diplomacies, how to handle egos. Something that starts developing very, very young. I remember a situation where someone said to me, they finally attacked me at one point, and I remember crying over this. They said, you always lead things. You know, in the church, someone sings the lead part, you know, and then there's an answering part by the entire choir. We call it leading the choir. And they said, you always lead the song. And I said, well, I've tried to get you to lead a song for the last month or 2 months or whatever, and you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't show up to the rehearsals, and when you did on Sunday morning, you wouldn't sing it. Well, we wanted you to force us to do it. Excuse me? You know, it hurts a child's heart to hear that. These are adults who say things like this. There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of petty.
Well, it's sort of the center of social in so many places.
Exactly.
So status comes from your ranking in it, and you know, at least that's what I observed when I was a child going to church.
The interesting thing is that a lot of that you get in the professional world, doesn't? Yeah. So I think I learned how to deal with it on that level, and then it was a great surprise by the time I got into professional world.
So was it hard to get respect at that age from them, or?
Yeah, I suppose. I was very young and very little.
And was it because your daddy minister that you became the leader? I mean, you probably just had a better voice, of course, obviously.
I was the one who could play the piano, and my papa actually, he had prayed for a daughter who could play the piano, and God had sent him one, and that was his way to keep an eye on me. It would bless his soul, rest his soul. I remember going home years later, and he said, I could have bought a little place here for you to sing in. And I said, well...
You mean professional singer?
Yeah, right.
So you're saying you didn't have to leave?
Yeah, I didn't have to leave. How do you explain to your father, I want to sing to a few more people than Justin Yakima. Bless his heart, he was just so sweet. He was so sweet when he said it. He was the kind of father who, if you had an argument, and he wins that argument is simply by walking away and going to bed. And he can sleep. Why is it fathers can sleep? They can sleep. You stay awake. The next morning when you get up to go to school, he has gone work before you, and so he left a note on the steering wheel of my car or on the kitchen table saying, you know, I love you, and you know I only want what's best for you. And I love those notes. I thought that was really sweet.
Can we take a break for a minute?
Sure.
And right back with singer. I'm back with singer Oleta Adams, whose new album is Moving On. Oleta, when the music gets all inside me, I start yelling out and jumping up and down like a fool. It sounded like a Baptist I went to as a kid.
That was a part of it. You know, I think that's wonderful. We have a wonderful culture and tradition. That was a fun thing also about my shows in Kansas City Kansas City and abroad, when I got a chance to work in the clubs, and I would always put in a gospel medley, and people loosened up a bit and started clapping their hands. And I think the thing that they enjoyed about it was that they could really let go and express themselves. And
it's a celebration.
It's a great celebration. And I'm sure it probably comes from the African tradition.
Absolutely, and it's a tribal tradition.
Yes.
It makes a tribe. I miss that terribly.
You should visit the churches today. Completely blow your mind.
Why? What's going on now?
Because the music sounds like the secular. They've got everything. In fact, in some churches, they even have rappers. I'm telling you.
Whoa, rap for Jesus. That's a
telling you.
very good idea, actually.
In fact,
Why
I
not?
visited a church in Inglewood in California at one point, and I was fine until they did the Hallelujah whip, and I said,
the Hallelujah.
I mean, they said, okay, everybody trying to go, oh, Hallelujah, and I went, oh no, when are we leaving here?
That's good. Do you write most of your songs?
I write half of them.
Half of them. God, that must be a good feeling.
It's a lot of anxiety. I mean, it's like, if I tell you now, I want you on, what would you do?
Go vomit. I've had to write before. It's horrible. It's the most exciting thing, but then it really does make you nervous. It's true.
Because what you have to write about something that you know, and you don't want to sound like everybody else, and you want to sound profound, and yet you don't want to sound pretentious, and you want to fit in only enough to be considered commercial in the sense that they'll buy it, not commercial in the sense that everybody else is doing the same thing. And it's a very difficult thing to balance.
Tell me how you landed in Kansas City.
I wonder that myself sometimes. Actually, I was performing in Seattle at one of the Westin hotels in Seattle, and a person came up to me who was the food and beverage manager of the Crown Center Hotel in Kansas City, because that was their headquarters. And he said, we got a fantastic room for you back in Kansas City, Missouri. And I said, Kansas City? And he said, yeah, and we'd love for you to come back there. And I thought, well, sure, why not? You know, I thought to myself, it's a gig, and I'd love to keep working. And then when I got back there, I was amazed at how wonderful things were, how friendly the people were, how open and responsive they were to what I had to offer. I was recognized an awful lot in Kansas City. I mean, people who came through, Taylor, Air Supply, George Benson, KISS, Joe Zawinul, Weather Report, just Barry and all of his people and the musicians from all of these groups.
You were working at a club there?
I was working at a hotel club in Kansas City where all of the acts stayed.
Right.
All the ball players stayed. Even Hank Aaron tried to help once, you know. He didn't know what to do, but he said, you know, I really think you're talented. I want something wonderful to happen for you. So you play there and you play there, and I got comfortable there because I was successful on that level. And I thought, fine, if this is all God gives me, okay. then I'll enjoy this little corner of the sky.
Let's take a break and we'll be right back with Oleta Adams. We're back with singer Oleta Adams. You were telling me a story about the Smothers Brothers in Kansas City?
Yeah, everybody stopped into the club to hear the show, and the Smothers Brothers came in. We were talking about people hoping to make it under the circumstances like performing clubs and so forth, and hoping that someone would discover them. And I said to them, I said, well, most performers are barely hanging on as it is, and they probably don't have any particular way of helping another young person get going in the business. And he said, you understand that? And I said, yes, I understand that. Which said to me that I was right, first of all, because I've seen a lot of people and come through and hear me sing. No one has ever said I can't sing. Mm-hmm. The problem is having a vehicle on which to get to the place that you need to go. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
So then what happened in Kansas City when Tears for Fears came along?
Right. I vaguely remember in 1985, I was performing at the Hyatt Hotel in a club called the Peppercorn Duck Club.
Peppercorn Duck, that's good.
It's a mouthful. And at that time, I had quite a following. So the room was full, and Tears for Fears had been through Kansas City that night performing. They were staying at the Hyatt, and they went back to the room, changed their clothes, and went to the bar for a drink. They had to pay, what, $2.50 or something to get. The only place to sit was at the bar. Roland told me the story. And we performed, and I love emotional performances. I love to just have fun laughing. I love to get songs that make you cry, make you feel good, songs that make you think. I love Broadway material, a little bit of everything. And I gave it all to them that night because I figured my days were numbered, so go out in style.
Right.
And I never talked to them that night. And 2 years later, without ever having met them, after having written a song called Woman in Chains, they remembered me, and they called to ask, how can I get a hold of that lady? And they gave them my agent's number, who gave them my private number. And when I answered the phone, that falls. And, you know, you're testing the line, wondering if this is overseas or not, and if the accent is real. And I thought, well, that's nice. I got a phone call, and I kind of left it at that. And then they came back to Kansas City just to talk to me, the two of them, Roland Sabal and Kurt Smith. And we hooked up.
Now, how did you feel about coming back? And here's this circle of one.
I didn't believe it.
You didn't believe it?
No, because, you know, when you're over there, when you're doing promotion for when your record comes out, you're so busy promoting it and doing television shows and interviews and this and that. You don't listen to the radio, so you don't hear yourself played over and over. You don't read the things, at least I don't, that are printed about you. So you have no idea that anyone even knows who you are.
And how long had you been in Europe?
Oh, probably a year and a half off and on. I was on promotion for a year and a half straight, first record. Not to mention that prior to that, I'd been on the road with Fears on a world tour for 6 months.
Come back and you're a star. So how would that feel?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't really feel like I started A.
You had a big hit.
I had a big hit, and with Get Here, it was a good song. Brenda Russell wrote it.
And that was the national anthem of the Gulf War.
Some people say that. You know, we hear that in wines. Everyone latches onto some song that helps to bring an awful lot of people through tough times. It's very sentimental. But I certainly didn't, you know, start a war to get a hit.
You said you wanted to start a Broadway musical. Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
No. How do you imagine that?
Because I like to be so theatrical. I have big features, you know. I'm a mouth.
Yeah, well, you really would.
I can project, and I think it would be fun. But I don't want to do one of those music as, you know, circus going on. I think with a small cast and something that is meaningful and significant and traditional, maybe in certain ways, that you get a chance to just tug at the heartstrings, that big va 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 voom songs, and really sink your teeth into I'd like to do that.
Back with singer Oleta Adams. We're back with singer Oleta Adams. So, I was asking you about being a bad girl. You were a preacher's...
Yeah, so I've heard.
Maybe you were too busy being bad to notice.
You know what? It's funny. I think I was a chicken when I was a kid. I was really scared of... Mom wore a nice little leather belt that she kept in her drawer. And if I did anything wrong, all she had to do was to go near the bedroom, and I was already crying. I'm frightened of everything to be bad.
Did you have brothers?
Yes, I did, matter of fact.
How were they?
They were right. You know, they got into enough trouble. You know, most of the whips that I got because of my sister.
Do tell.
Oh, she
was older, and she would blame it on you because you were younger?
She blamed it on me.
I had the same story with my Artie.
You know? And my mom thought that she was being fair by just whooping everyone. That eventually the truth would come out. I said to her one day, I said, listen, she always, you know, I mean, we knew it, Why did you whoop me? She said, I want to be fair.
You're a newlywed.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
My husband and I went together for 12 years before we got married, and it took me a little because
long engagements. You believe in long engagements?
I wanted to be sure.
We do. I believe in a couple of long engagements myself.
You know, a couple of long engagements. He's wonderful. He's a drummer in the same business, and someone who knew me before all of this happened. So I know I have the person.
Yeah, that's good. I want to read something else that you said.
Okay.
You said, I'm passionate in life, love, music, temperament, but I've learned I am.
Yeah, I have.
So you were far, but...
Not exactly, because you know that preacher's kid part still stayed for an awful lot of it, but being in this business, you can get a little rough around the edges, and I was known as somebody who didn't mind speaking her mind. I'm a lot more tolerant of people. I'm a lot more patient today. I think instead of just saying, no, this is the way it's going to be, I give a lot more time to listening to what someone else suggests. And I think that has to do with maturity. I'm sure it has to do with maturity. Because when you don't make it through just about anything, then you're frightened of what you don't know in the future.
When you've already been through the ups and downs.
Exactly.
So how'd you learn to control it, your anger?
I think being changed as a Christian.
Just getting older.
Just, yeah. I think that's a lot of it. It never really gains anything, does it? You know?
So how do you paid a lot of dues, basically, long-paying dues. How do you feel about that now?
I'm still paying dues. You never stop paying dues. The more you do and try to prove yourself, it seems like the more people ignore what you've done. And things keep changing. I keep feeling the rules keep changing all the time. You keep complying with the rules. You say, okay, fine. You don't take basketball rules into a football game, right? So you say, okay, fine, I'll play by the rules. And as soon as you figure out just how to get around those big guys to make the touchdown, then they switch the rules.
It's like the IRS. They do change the rules year to year.
Now you're swearing, you see. You're swearing. Don't use profanity on this show.
Yes, ma'am, you're right. Listen, thanks for coming and seeing us, Oleta.
Thank you.
And best of luck with your new release.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Put it there. Bye. Thanks for joining us. Hope you come back and see us again. Good night.